Advocacy is not misconduct. Professional disagreement is not defiance. Caring so deeply does not make you difficult. Yet so many of us, we've experienced working with a system where speaking up calmly, thoughtfully, professionally, even that comes with a consequence. Hey friends, welcome back to Fostering Kingdoms. If you are new here, I'm Jess. I am a wife, a mother, and I've been a foster carer for the past 6.5 years. So Fostering Kingdoms, this space exists for carers that love deeply, advocate fiercely, and sometimes find themselves paying a quiet cost for doing the right thing. So welcome to season 2. Season 2 is going to be a little bit different. So let's grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's dive in. This season is for the carers who have felt misunderstood, unheard, or even punished for advocating for the children in their care. It's for those moments when you stood your ground, not because of your ego, but because you knew the responsibility placed on you, but you also knew that that came with a cost. This season is about those times when it's been hard, but knowing that the only thing that has kept you steady was God. I want to start this season by saying something clearly before we move forward. Advocacy is not misconduct. Professional disagreement is not defiance. And caring deeply does not make you difficult. Many of us have experienced a system where speaking up, even calmly, thoughtfully, professionally, comes with consequences. This episode isn't about attacking anyone, but it's about telling my truth, gently and faithfully, through my lived experiences, through shared experiences, as a collective, as we move forward to be the change that we so desperately want to see. I have been told on many of my reviews that I'm a fierce advocate, and sometimes that can be seen as a good thing. Sometimes that just means I am difficult and I will argue and I will fight for the children. I advocate for the children in my care because they need a safe, secure, grounded adult to be their voice, but to also be their anchor and their safety. Children don't have the mental capacity that adults do. They don't see risk the same way that adults do. They don't have the life experience that adults do. They don't understand the long-term consequences, and they don't understand the system's decisions that impact on their lives. So when something doesn't feel right, or something doesn't feel safe, or there needs to be change around a child, I speak up. And sometimes I can speak up and that comes with a cost. And recently, just over the Christmas period, I had to advocate for a child to be moved to a more secure environment. And I want to say this clearly. I wanted to help that child. I saw myself in that child and I knew what that child needed. I just wasn't the one that was able to support them safely at that time. And I also have to remember, as much as I wanted to just go all in on this child, I still have 5 other children in my home that also needed me. So I knew I had to advocate for this child to get the right help and support that they needed. I had to come to that decision with compassion, honesty, and responsibility over my household, but also over that child. And that decision, it did hurt me. But if I hadn't have advocated for that child at the time, I knew that the result would have hurt the child. They would have continuously put themselves in harmful, dangerous situations that I couldn't stop them from putting themselves in. Sometimes that's the hardest thing as being a carer, is there are still rules and regulations that we have to live by. So we have to put the child's needs above our own emotions. And that's the tension that carers have to live with each and every day. So what I have learned over my years as being a carer and what other carers have shared with me is that advocacy often comes with a cost. You get labelled as challenging, you can be uncooperative, you can have markers put against you so that local authorities don't want to work with you if you work for an independent fostering agency, or there can still be markers against you if you work for a local authority. You can feel the shift in the home. You can feel the withdrawal of communication. You can feel the subtle distancing between you and the other adults around the children. And that can feel really difficult when you're trying to advocate for a child and you feel like it's falling on deaf ears. Because you then shift from just advocating for a child to trying to hold your own integrity together at the same time. You are trying to fight for the right for the child whilst trying not to lose who you are, trying not to lose your mind, trying to do the right thing by everybody. This is where I've learned that faith, it doesn't just become a comfort in these difficult times, it becomes an anchor. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves." And I don't know if you've ever heard that verse before, but I feel like we don't talk enough about what happens when you do speak up for others. What happens when the obedience of speaking out for another child, for doing the right thing by the child, when that has a cost, how do we deal with the cost that's given to us? What happens when doing the right thing, it doesn't actually bring clarity or confirmation or affirmation that we've done the right thing? What do we do in those situations? How then do we move forward? For me, I've learned that faith in those moments, it isn't loud. It's the quiet endurance, being able to show up consistently, to keep being the voice that needs to be heard. I have to stay grounded when the outcome isn't quite what I hoped for. And I have to trust that I can't control all of those situations, but God knows the plans, not only for my life and your life, but He knows the plans for the children in our care. And it may not look like the way that we thought it would. We may not have expected it to go the way that it did, but trusting that God knows the plans for every one of us. Well, that's helped me from being the difficult carer, the one who's trying to control all the situations. So I gently want to challenge something that many carers carry. I want us to reframe being difficult, because you're not difficult just because you advocate. You're discerning, you're responsible. You are doing frontline work in real time with real life consequences. Living alongside a child means that we often see what others don't. And that can be really hard when the child social worker pops in for 10, 15, 20 minutes once every 6 weeks, and they get to make the decisions on this child's life and they don't listen to us. But keep going. You're going to notice the patterns. You're going to notice the emotional weight long after the meetings end. And honestly, it really doesn't make you a problem. It makes you a protector of that child. I believe there should be a change in the care system. And if you can imagine on a diagram, we have the child at the top. The next person below that should be the carer. And then the person below that should be the social worker. And as a foster carer, we are the middleman. We're the one that takes the hits from the child, but also from the social workers. And I don't think they fully see this. We take the emotional hit, the physical hits from the children, but we also take it from the social workers. We have to intervene when their decisions aren't the right thing. We have to be the one to inform them of all the different situations and emotions and behaviours that come with the child. They cannot do their job without us. And I pray that there is a big shift in the social system at how foster carers are looked at. But if you're listening to this right now and you are deeply in the middle of it all, you are questioning yourself, you are second guessing your voice, you are feeling worn down, I want you to just pause and breathe. You know what it's like to be in those situations. But I also know that you are allowed to stand firm in your decision, in your voice, but you're also allowed to stay soft towards that child, towards yourself. You're allowed to advocate and advocate fiercely, but you're also allowed to protect your own heart, because things do get messy, and they can get messy so quickly. You're allowed to trust that God sees what everybody else may miss. God sees the moments when you are crying out to Him. He sees the moments when you are broken and tired, but He also sees when the child is emotionally dysregulated, when the child is finding it difficult, when the child needs you. It can be quite hard to try and verbalize to the social workers what we actually go through on a day-to-day basis. They don't get to see what we see. But Scripture reminds us that the Lord, He sees not as man sees. God sees everything that we're doing. He knows our hearts. And sometimes we may feel like we're having to over-explain ourselves to social workers or supervising social workers. We may be constantly trying to defend ourselves, our actions, our reasoning. But God, He knows all of it. He sees our heart posture. And I think that's so important. That sometimes that's the only reassurance that we have, is our faith. Our faith allows us to be able to move forward. Season 2, we are going to be going a bit deeper. In the next episode, I want to be talking about professional disagreement. I have been there many a times. But I'm also going to be talking about what it's like living with responsibility without the authority, about allegations, burnout, and the emotional toll of caring in hard systems that we are in and day out. But always, we will bring it back to God. Because without God, without His rest, without His grace, without His love, we cannot keep going. Fostering can really take its toll on you. But we're going to be looking at faith not as an escape, not as a get out of jail, I don't have to face this. No, but we look at faith as our foundation so that we can continuously keep going on this journey. We have been called to foster by God. He leads us into our roles. But I hope if this episode has resonated with you, I would love to stay connected. You can find reflections and resources over at FosteringKingdoms.com. And you are always welcome here on our podcast. You're not alone. Your voice matters. Your faith is not misplaced, even when the roads feel heavy.